Good day, Steve Anderson here from the Crown Council. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today, Maximizing Technology to Improve Retention, Reactivation, and Patient Acquisition. We're going to get started here in about 2 minutes at the top of the hour. You are in listen-only mode, which means you should be able to hear us loud and clear. We cannot hear you. That's in order to minimize background noise so everybody can hear the presentation loud and clear today. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, you're welcome to go ahead and enter that question in the question box on your control panel, and we will address those first come, first serve. If this is the first time, or if you've ever been on one of our webinars before, I'm going to invite you to go down to the poll section of your control panel, and we've just launched a poll for our webinar today. Mike has agreed to customize the presentation on the attendees today, and so go ahead and vote. If you'll just go ahead and respond to that question right now, that'll help our presenter know how to present and tailor all of the information. So you're welcome to go ahead and do that. A couple of announcements. We just wrapped up the 2016 Smiles for Life campaign on June 30th, and we're excited to announce we are last year's donations so far by over $100,000, which is the best we've had in the last 5. Donations are still being accepted for the next month, so we'll take the last of the donations need to be into the Crown Council office by August 1st for distribution this year. So those checks will be distributed as long as the money is in by August 1st. So congratulations on a great year, and thanks so much for everything that you've done and continue to do to make a difference in children's lives. We were just in Las Vegas and doing some Smiles for Life work with the Child Life Zone directors from around the country, which is a Smiles for Life project that we engage in with Garth Brooks, and had a great time there, and they were most grateful for all the generosity there. So if you still have donations sitting there that you need to get in, make sure and get those in here in the next couple of weeks by August 1st for distribution this year to your local charity. One other announcement, annual event coming up in February. You can go to crowncouncil.org under events for all the detailed information there. It is going to be an outstanding event in Nashville, Tennessee, home of country music. We're looking forward to a great charity concert on the Thursday to kick off the annual event that you will not want to miss, and should be an exciting event. Great lineup, unprecedented, some of the things that we're putting together, so we'll look forward to seeing everyone there. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you want to go ahead and make sure you get your vote in on the poll, so I'm going to close that here in just a minute as soon as Mike gets started, so thanks for weighing in there. Let me tell you the purpose of the webinar today and why we asked Mike Buckner to share some time with. A lot of things are changing in dentistry, a lot of things are changing in technology, and a lot of things are changing in terms of patient and consumer. Give us, from his perspective and research, everything that he knows in terms of patient communication, electronic communication, and how to build the practice, how to use it properly, some things you should avoid. A little bit of background about Mike. Mike Buckner is the Business Development Director for Dentistry with Solution Reach. Solution Reach is the largest digital communication system in dentistry, serves more dental practices than any other software of its kind in the industry. So they've got some great reach. They also work in some other industries as well as dentistry, so they've got a really good grasp on this whole space and how people respond to electronic communication and just communication from the office in general. Mike spends his days educating dental practices and people in the dental industry on how to communicate effectively with their clients, their patients, and how to get them to respond to the communications that get out there. Digital communication is a very crowded space, as all of you know, because we all receive a lot of it. And so, like anything else, making sure that you have well-crafted information, well-crafted messaging makes a huge difference. So we've asked Mike today to share his wisdom and experience that we can all use in this area. So with that, we welcome Mike Buckner to our presenter for today's webinar. Mike?
Thank you very much. I'm excited for this opportunity and the opportunity to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. I love technology, and over the last few years, one of the reasons that I do what I do is because I have seen such a dramatic impact on practices who have implemented certain technologies into their practice in order to just make life easier, in order to increase efficiency in the practice. So, that being said, one of the experiences that really impacted me when it came to technology and really kind of opened my eyes was something that I wanted to share with you. It took place in New York City, of all places. I love New York, and the first time going to New York, in my mind, I had seen on TV and on movies, how people get out and they hail a cab, and that was something that I wanted to do. I know it sounds silly, but I was like, when I go to New York, that's like the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to be like a real New Yorker. So when I got to the airport and I got out on the curb, the cab, pulls up, and I go to get in the cab, and it was raining that day, and so I expected, like in the movies, the cab driver would get out, get my bags, and put them in the cab. Well, the cab pulls up, and when the cab pulled up, nobody got out of the cab. Instead, he saw that I had my bags, and he popped the trunk and kind of expected me to go put my bags in. So I grabbed my bags, and I went over, and I lifted up the trunk, and I saw something like this. It kind of took me back, and I thought, gosh, I don't want to put my suitcase in there. But I went ahead and I put my suitcase in, and then I went to proceed to go get into the cab. And on a rainy day in New York, if you've been in cabs in New York City, you know that the inside can often get wet and dirty. So I go to get in, and everything's wet, and I sit down, and the first thing that I see is, besides this wall kind of between me and the driver, the first thing that jumps out at me was a number right here for complaints. And it was almost as if they expect people to have complaints. They expected you to be upset or to when you're going to complain, this is the number that you reference, this is the cab number. And I was kind of taken back by that. And needless to say, when I got in the cab, I've learned now that if I'm taking a yellow cab in New York City, my experience when I get to my hotel, I almost have to have 30 minutes just to sit and kind of unwind because I'm either car sick or, the smells that were in the cab. It really wasn't a pleasant experience for me. But up until something that I learned, the yellow cabs were like a necessary evil. And I'm not trying to talk bad or disparage the cab industry, but it was not a positive experience for me. Well, I was sharing this experience with someone, and they told me about Uber. And if you've taken Uber before, hopefully you know how awesome it is. And so for me, the next time I went to New York, I was prepared. And I downloaded the Uber app. And if you don't know what Uber is a ride-sharing company, and basically you can become a kind of a driver by having a phone and having an app and signing up with Uber. So as a passenger, I got to New York City and I went out and I decided to hail Uber using my phone. But the cool thing is I had also just recently gotten an Apple Watch, and I learned that I could also hail Uber using my Apple Watch, and which shows you how long it takes for the driver to get to you. And so when the driver came to pick me up, it was a very positive experience. In fact, the driver got out of his car and very nicely dressed actually, and got my bags, put them in, opened my door for me, and I went and I sat down, and I thought, man, this is night and day experience. And as I'm sitting there, he then proceeds to give me a bottle of Uber branded water. And I thought, holy cow, I feel like this is not the cab industry. I feel like I'm in a limo. And then something happened that really shocked me and really kind of hit home for me the power of technology. Is he turns around and he said, "Mr. Buckner, I received a notification on my telephone or on my cell phone that your phone was low on power. Would you like to charge it up?" And he proceeds to hand me a plug to charge my phone. And I thought, holy cow, this has totally blown me away. I didn't know if I should be scared or not, the fact that he knew that my phone needed a charge. But I thought, wow, that right there is service. So I went ahead and I plugged my phone in, and at the end of the ride, if you've ever taken an Uber, at the end of the ride, there is no finagling of prices, or you don't have to, the driver doesn't know immediately what's tipped or anything else. You don't have to discuss that. In fact, everything is taken care of on your phone. The payment information is secured in your phone, so all you really have to do is to get up and get out of the cab. Once you're out of the cab and or the Uber and your ride is over, you have the opportunity to leave a review for your driver, and it shows you how much your fare was, and you get a receipt right there on the phone. Now, what's interesting to me is that the industry now lives and breathes and dies by these reviews. And now, even so, I can leave a review for my driver. Now, what that does is that makes these drivers want to stand out and provide the best service possible, because he knows that at the end of his experience, you're going to be leaving a review for him. So to kind of expound on this, what took place when Uber came out, they actually coined as the Uber effect. And what happened was, for a few months, about 2 years after Uber came out in San Francisco and kind of exploded in San Francisco, is that the cab fares dropped nearly in half because people learned that Uber was the way to go. It had a dramatic impact on the cab industry in San Francisco. So much so that yellow cabs ended up having to come up with their own applications, with their own technologies in order to stay competitive with Uber. And this kind of went across the country. So now if you go to New York City, yes, you can get Uber, but you also have these apps that you can use in yellow cabs, because this is the only way that these yellow cabs can stay competitive. So what I learned by that is that the dental industry, this really relates to me, to the dental industry, because this really distinguishes the practices that implement and use technology versus the practices that are using the same technologies or practices that they've been using since the 90s or early 2000s. And so everyone has choices. As patients to your practice, everyone has choices. And I know that we get comfortable thinking, John Doe has been a patient of mine for years. I know that he's going to keep on coming. But little by little, what we don't realize sometimes is that the little decisions, the little things that take place in your practice can influence and impact the decisions that your patients make. Everything that happens in your practice will either have a push or a pull effect. It's what we kind of call the magnet effect, where everything that you do in your practice, whether it's implementing technology, whether it's interacting with your patients, everything has either a push or a pull effect. So this is something to think about. The practice that you run right now, is your practice a patient magnet? Are you doing everything that you can do in order to attract patients? So when we take this a step further, this is something that I love this quote. And it says, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And better yet, I love this one too, that says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So think about your patients. Think about the patients that come into your practice every day. Do we get too caught up? Do we get too caught up in just the routine, bring them, drill them, fill them, send them out, or are we really taking care of our patients? So I want to just talk a little bit about why patients leave your practice. And uh, and so there's a number of reasons why people leave your practice. So starting off at the very top, 1% of your practice unfortunately will die. So you'll have that attrition rate. You'll have the older generations, the older individuals that will eventually pass on. You'll have 3% that will move away. 5% leave because they've received a recommendation from one of their friends or one of their trusted confidants to go and check out this other dentist. You'll have 9% that will leave because they did not know that you offered one thing or another. And I use Invisalign as an example because a lot of times you'll see dentists that will send out like a special. They'll run an ad about Invisalign, and a patient will say, "Oh gosh, well this doctor over here does Invisalign, so I'm going to go check him out." And then they go over and they end up staying. So 9% of your patients leave because maybe they did not know that you offered Invisalign or that you offered one thing or another. You have 14% that leave because they're dissatisfied. Now, we all know that there are those patients that you just can't keep happy, or they're dissatisfied because maybe they experience just a little bit of pain or whatever it might be, but 14% will leave because they're dissatisfied. So this right here, this makes up 32%, which leaves a huge amount. Why people leave your practice? 68%, 68% of your practice leave because of perceived indifference. They feel like you don't care. Now, I will give an example because I actually had this happen to me. I left a previous dentist because I had been going to him for years, growing up, in fact. And so I kind of got in that routine that I knew that that was my dentist. I'd keep going. Well, I missed an appointment, and when I missed an appointment, I actually never heard from him. I never got a phone call to reschedule. Never heard anything. And after about 8 months, close to 10 months, I started thinking, gosh, I'm kind of embarrassed to go back now because it's been so long. I missed that appointment. I kind of didn't. I kind of felt like he didn't care. And so this really hits home. You have the majority of your patients leave because they feel like maybe you don't care. So when we focus on what is most important to your patients, there was a study that was done in Chicago in 2014. And a study was done to really determine, when it comes to a practitioner, what patients say is the most important. And so as they did this survey, they realized that the number one factor that will keep patients, that basically drive patients to a certain healthcare provider, is that doctor listens or is attentive. That is the number one quality, most important factor that makes a high quality doctor, is that they listen and that they are attentive. And second, and by a long shot, you can see by a long shot, is a doctor that accurately diagnoses or about their competence. So the number one trait right there is listens and attentive. The number one trait has to do with the relationships that you have with your patients. Now, as we look at the others, you'll see that most factors on here have to do with that relationship. Listens and attentive, caring, bedside manner, or the relationship with your patients. Personality trait, time with patients, and so on and so forth. And in fact, as we highlight, there are only a few that have to do with the knowledge, the competence, the training, or experience of that doctor. So what drives people to you? What are the traits? What are the qualities that drive people to you? So when we think about that, what can we do? What is most important to your patients? What's most important to your patients is communication. So there are several companies that are out there, and kind of the poll that you took earlier, where we talked about other patient relationship companies like Solution Reach, Demand Force, Lighthouse. These are all companies that really kind of coined this, the patient relationship management system. We know that it is important that the relationships that you have with your patients directly correlate to the success of your practice. It's all about the relationships. And when we look at where our relationships are managed today, I want you to think about that for a second. How many of you have already, while you're at work, you've already been communicating with your friends or your loved ones, all by using technology? This right here is something that we see every day. If you travel on the planes, as soon as that plane lands, everyone gets their phones out. We realize that the most powerful tool in order for you to stay engaged and to enhance the relationship with your patients is that mobile device. So much so that I know that if we ran another poll here, I'm sure that we would be surprised by the answers. But how many of you even take that mobile device, even take your cell phone to bed with you? We are so tied to our cell phones because it's not just a phone. It is a computer. It is a way for us to reach out and to connect with others. So this is actually kind of pretty interesting. But the percentage of people that sleep with their phones, the millennial generation, 83% of them sleep with their phone, sleep with their phone, and because we are driven by the daily connections that we have to people. 68% of Generation X, 50% of the Boomer generation. So this is huge. And whether or not, and think about this, when you wake up in the morning, what do you do? What's your routine in the morning? For the first few minutes of the day, how many of you kind of stretch your arm right out, reach it over to the side, grab your phone, and what do? We start scrolling. It's become habit now. It's become kind of a norm for us to just check in with social media or whatever that might be. So I think we all understand the importance of technology. Now it's just about maximizing that technology. So we talked about patient retention. We talked about patient acquisition and patient education, and reactivation. And so in using technologies, most of these companies, and what I want to do today is I don't want to just focus on one specific, company, kind of a feature benefit type of thing. But what I want to do is I really want to focus on whatever you're using right now, make sure that you're implementing these next few steps in order to make sure that you're maximizing the technology in your practice so that your practice is running as efficiently as possible. So I know that we often think, okay, number one step, what we need to do is we need new patients. We need to bring new patients in the door right away. Well, when you think about it, you can fill a bucket as much as you want, but if there's still holes in that bucket, it does us no good. So before we worry about bringing new patients in the door, let's first of all take a look at what practices you're putting in place in order to make sure that people aren't coming in the door and walking right back out the back door. So let's make sure that we're filling those holes. Let's make sure that we are retaining patients. So when we talk about using technology to retain patients, I know that a lot of us, when we think of our front office manager, they are on the phones a lot. And I mean, they're putting in long, hard hours, spending a lot of time on the phones. And what we realize when you've got people that are on the phones, when you've got your front office manager on the phones calling all day to either confirm appointments, to move people around, to bring people in to kind of fill last minute gaps or holes in the schedule. And if you asked your front office managers, they might agree with you with this, but 75% of the calls that they make don't get through to the right person. So when we think about being efficient, when we think about being effective, and we think about the time that's spent with your front office manager on the phone trying to either confirm or bring people back in the door, 75% of the time when they call, they're either getting an answering machine, or they're getting someone that they're not in right now, or they're just straight up nobody's answering the phone. Now, if you look at your cell phones right now, if you look at your cell phones, you'll probably see that you may have missed a few calls, or you may have a few unanswered emails. Well, we actually did this experiment at a meeting in Dallas recently. And basically I said, all right, now out there, I want to know how many unheard or unlistened to messages do you have on your cell phone? And we had an individual in the audience who had over 100 messages on their phone that weren't listened to. So what does this tell us? This tells us that nowadays, even if you're leaving a voice message, people aren't listening to it. So when you think about that front office manager and how busy their schedule is, There's no shortage of things to do, but we want to make sure that they're using their time efficiently and the most effective way possible. So in doing that, we also ran a survey last year across the country, a nationwide survey where we asked the patients, how do you want your office to confirm their appointments with you? Would you rather receive a phone call, or would you rather click to confirm your appointment? This might shock you. 92% of those individuals don't want to talk to you. 92% said that they would rather just click to confirm an appointment rather than getting a phone call. And when we think about the phone calls nowadays, phone calls become intrusive. In fact, in the business world, we schedule phone calls with people because we know that it becomes intrusive. However, if I send a text message to someone or an email to someone, we generally get a response back fairly quickly. In fact, when you send a text message out, on average, a text message is viewed within 3 minutes and responded to within 6 minutes. If you get a phone call, you might not have a chance to respond to that phone call until later that day. So think about your front office managers. Think about the people who are on the phones in your practice and how much time they're spending on the phones. And as they're leaving messages throughout the day, the only time a lot of these people have to call back is after hours. So you're just constantly playing phone tag. So again, 97% of the text messages that are viewed within 3 minutes. So a lot of the companies that we talked about, Lighthouse, Demandforce, Solution Reach, and several others, will have the ability, and this is something that I just want to touch on and really focus on, is make sure that whatever system, whatever company you're using, that you are sending automated confirmations. I've talked to a lot of people who say, my patients love the phone calls. Well, you might think that, but if you give them an option to confirm an appointment by just clicking, it saves a lot of time, not only for you, but for them as well. So by sending out something like this that says, just a friendly reminder about your appointment, click here to confirm now. Once they click on that, most of these systems, and I know Solution Reach does, once you click on confirm now, automatically in the practice management system, in most of them, it will actually even write back and change the color in the system to show that that's been confirmed. Saves a lot of time. So what happens when maybe we feel like we've confirmed all the appointments the next day, but you've got that individual who at midnight the night before, late night, what do? They call in and they leave that message that says, hey, sorry, I can't come into my 8 o'clock appointment in the morning. And what do you want to do? It just makes you want to scream. You come in the morning, you're all jazzed up, you're ready to have a long, productive day. And what happens is the first thing right out of the gate, your appointment fails. 8 o'clock in the morning, your appointment fails. So what happens? What do we do? When you've got an 8 o'clock hole in your schedule, I know that a lot of times you'll have that doctor that will walk down the hallway, and the front office manager's kind of dreading it because they know, and he says, all right, get on the phone, you look at that ASAP list, and let's get calling. Let's try to fill that appointment. Now, I'm speaking as a patient, and as a patient, if I'm getting a phone call at 7 in the morning, because let's think about it, you're probably going to have to start calling at about 7:30 in the morning if you're going to fill that 8 o'clock appointment. And if I get a phone call at 7 or 7:30 in the morning to come in for an 8 o'clock appointment, chances are I probably won't be coming in to fill that appointment or possibly ever again, because I don't want a phone call that early. However, if I've told my dentist, hey, I want to get in as soon as possible, my schedule is crazy, if you can just let me know when you have any openings, send me a text message. And if you send a text message to a certain group of patients that says, hey, we have an opening in our schedule today, please call us if you'd like to fill this appointment, or the first person to call us back will get that opening at 8 o'clock. They can either click or they can call into the practice. What that does is that reduces the chances of having that open spot in your schedule. And on average, by using a system like this, now we don't recommend blasting this out to everyone, but sending it to your ASAP list. Now, again, a lot of these systems will have similar capabilities. I know just personally that the Solution Reach has the ability to send a message to your ASAP list that is kept in your practice management system. That will basically, you'll be able to customize that list. You'll also even be able to do it by radius. So if you live in an area where your patients are spread out, and on that ASAP list or on that standby list, you have people that are maybe 50 miles away, you can reduce that. You can reduce that down to people who are within 5 miles, who you know can get to your practice within a few minutes to fill that opening. So this is something to think about. These are ways that we can make sure that we retain our patients, that we're filling holes in the schedule by sending out communications, and rather than placing a phone call at inconvenient times, by sending a text message to your patients that basically say, hey, we've got that opening. You wanted to, you wanted us to let you know when we have an opening. We've got that 3 o'clock. First person to call us can get that. What happens is this reduces your no-shows by 72%. So now what happens to your patients? What happens to that group of patients that maybe have fallen through the cracks, that missed their appointments, they're not coming in? What are you doing in order to bring those patients back in the door? Now think about this. Are we sending postcards out? Have we hired someone to sit at the front desk and to just call all day, every day to try and reactivate patients? Or are we maximizing technology to do this? Now I would say that not just one, but you need to be using all formats of technology. So you need to be reaching out to patients who are inactive by text, by email, and by phone. Now, postage, I know that some demographics, some areas do really well with receiving postcards or sending and receiving postcards, but what we've seen is we've kind of seen a fall in the efficiency of some of these postcards in some demographics. Now, I don't want to generalize, I don't want to stereotype, but some demographics, the postcards or the mailers just really aren't effective because people are getting to that mindset where they get the mail and they kind of throw away their junk mail. So on average, if you are using texts, emails, and automated voice messages to confirm appointments, or not to confirm, I'm sorry, but to reactivate patients, what you generally see is within 1 year's time, the ability to reactivate around $130,000 into a practice. And the best part about this is with most of these systems, you just flip a switch and it automatically does that for you, rather than having someone who is on the phones calling or mailing out postcards, which gets really expensive. So I want to share an experience. One of my great friends, Dr. Gillespie, and I don't know if you know him. These individuals, they're brothers. They live in Washington. A great friend of mine. But a few years back, when I was talking with Greg, he expressed, or he kind of talked to me a little bit about his practice, and I said, well, tell me about it. You know, where are you coming from? Practice like? And he had communicated that he had purchased the practice from his father. He and his brother had. And his father had been in the area practicing for close to 30 years. And the database of patients that came over were 14,000. Now, we know that an office probably does not see 14,000 patients, but that was the database that came over. And I said, that's fantastic. You got a great practice here. What are you doing? And he says, well, I've realized that a lot of these patients, obviously the majority of them, have kind of just fallen through the cracks, or they haven't been in years. And so I've hired someone. Basically, we've got someone that's calling all the time to try and reactivate patients and try and bring them in the doors. Now, when we implemented a system, we implemented Solution Reach into the practice, and we basically flipped the switch that started sending out automated text messages, automated voice messages, or automated emails to try to reactivate patients. Now, a lot of the systems like Demandforce and Lighthouse, they might have something similar to this, where it will send out, some of these automated messages. I know that for Solution Reach, it has the ability to determine if the only phone number that you have in the system is a home phone number, it will send a voice message. And if it's a cell phone number, it'll go ahead and send a text message. So we did this. We did this in Greg's office. And I said, Greg, I want to take a look at this in a year, and I want to see how much has been reactivated. Now, some of the systems out there will have the ability to track your ROI. Solution Reach has the ability to track the patients that have been reactivated. So, for example, a message goes out to a patient. The system will track that patient for 30 days. And if that patient comes back in the door or responds to that text message or that email, it will track the dollar amount that was brought back into the practice. So I didn't quite make it back out to Greg's office within 12 months, but I made it out there in 16 months. And we looked at the system. We looked at the numbers and the reports. Within 16 months' time, on average, like I said, This has the ability to reactivate about $130,000 in 1 year's time. In 16 months' time, when we pulled his report, Greg had reactivated $425,250 back into his practice. The individual who was calling before and trying to just bring people back in, now they didn't have a shortage of work. They just focused their work somewhere else, but this system automatically did that. And when I talked to Greg, he said, it was fantastic. Over the last year, I had patients that were coming back. They had not seen my father in 6+ years, and were saying, that's fantastic that he sold the practice to his sons. You guys are carrying it on. He was a great man. I'd love to come back into your practice. So the ROI with using technology for something like this is fantastic. Now, another way that we can gently kind of probe patients to come back into the practice is recognizing special events or like birthdays. Now, again, if you're sending postcards out or recognizing your patients' birthdays, that's fantastic. Think about the cost, though, with the postcards, because that can add up. Rather than that, I'd like to suggest something like sending an email or a text message out on a birthday. Now, last year we talked to a practice who had a soldier who had basically served overseas, and he says, Doc, you've got a patient for life, because on my birthday, the only thing that I got when I was out serving was a text message from you wishing me happy birthday. And he says, thank you so much. That meant the world to me. Now, this doctor had no idea who this patient was, unfortunately, because his patient database was so huge. But it looked like he took the credit for it, because it was an automated message that went out, and it meant a lot to that patient. So by sending something like this, a text message or an email that goes out, you can also, I would recommend putting a call to action in there. Put like a coupon, 10% off teeth whitening for a birthday gift, or something in there that will prompt the patients to come back into the practice. Now, again, to take that a step further, instead of just sending a text or an email out, you can put a little link in here, and some of these companies might be able to do this. It's not too difficult. Solution Reach, we put a link in the email that basically says something like, click here for a birthday surprise. And when you click on that, now this is kind of fun, but when you click on that, you get something that looks a little like this. Now, I'll be the first to say, yes, that is cheesy. It is cheesy. But patients love this. They remember it. It's something that sets it apart. And by sending something like this out to patients on their birthday at, let's say, 12 or 12:30, when they're probably out to lunch with their friends, this becomes a great referral source, because now they're showing their friends this video that their dentist made for them. So something like this that will just set you aside from the other dentists out there. It sets you aside from your competition, keeping in touch with your patients using technology. Now, we talk a little bit about the percentage of patients that leave your practice because they don't know what you offer. So what are we doing in order to educate patients on what you offer in the practice? Are we, when you go to a dental meeting or a seminar, are you coming back all jazzed up and you're talking to your patients about what you just learned? Let's say, for example, Invisalign. Maybe you just went and you got certified and you now are able to offer Invisalign. How long does that fire last? How long are you able to talk to every patient that comes in about that? Or are we sending out mailers? Are we sending out newsletters out to patients to try to let them know? Well, I know that where I live, right next to the mailbox, they've got this special filing cabinet for that. And it looks a little like this, unfortunately, where you go to the mailbox and you throw away all your junk mail, the things that you don't need, the ads. So what can we do to be a little bit more effective in that? Well, sending out newsletters. Sending out something like this that basically says, we offer Invisalign, you can request an appointment here, click here to learn more, is something that just lets your patients know. Now, to take that a step further, most of these patient relationship management systems will have the ability to do newsletters. Make sure that you can customize these newsletters. Make sure that you have templates in there. Now, in the Solution Reach library, I know that there's several partnerships with companies with newsletters to educate patients on what they offer. So let me just give the example of this Invisalign newsletter. The first step I would say would be to send this newsletter to all your patients. To send something that says, hey, we now offer Invisalign, for example. This is what it is. Click here to request an appointment or to learn more. Now, you can also get you can get a report back. After sending this newsletter, you get a report to show you how effective it was, how many people opened it, how many people clicked on certain links. So now you can take that group of people that clicked on click here to learn more, and you can send them something else that says, all right, we're excited that you want to learn more about Invisalign. Here are the next few steps to get you going. So you're not blasting your entire patient database over and over again, but rather you're targeting certain groups of patients. You're targeting the people that said, hey, I want to learn more about this. So now when by doing those things, it will help you bring patients back in the door. It will help you to educate your patients and make sure that they know what you offer in the practice. The last thing that I want to talk about here is patient acquisition. What kinds of technologies are out there? Now, everyone talks about Google. Google reviews are king, or Yelp. People live and die by Yelp. Now, I want to talk about each of these different platforms here, because when I go travel, and I travel quite a bit, I live by OpenTable. I love OpenTable because it is a review site that is specific to restaurants, and I can go in and I can request a reservation by using OpenTable. It's specific to the food industry, to restaurants. Travelocity. If you've traveled abroad, you know that some of these tourist places, they live and die by these Travelocity reviews. They'll give you a little flyer that says, please go leave us a review on Travelocity. Google to them is not so important, but Travelocity is everything. Amazon. If I want to go and learn about what kind of headphones to buy, I go to Amazon to look at those reviews. So what about healthcare? Are we still going to Google? Are we still going to Yelp? What is out there that will really that is focused on healthcare specific reviews? Now, I don't know if you know this, but how many of you have a Healthgrades profile out there? Healthgrades over the last few years has become the #1 website that is healthcare specific. Doctors, dentists, that has reviews on doctor specific the reviews are doctor specific. So I'm going to walk you through this, and if you'd like, go ahead and get your cell phones out. Go ahead and get your web browser out, because we're going to walk through this. Now, I'm going to use the example of Dr. Gillespie. Now, this was an example that I used a while back because Greg Gillespie now has a premium profile with Healthgrades, but before that, I wanted to kind of just see where he was at. So by doing that, I went to Google and I typed in Greg Gillespie DDS. Now, the very first review site that came up right after his website, the very first review site was Healthgrades. Greg had no idea that he had a Healthgrades profile on there. But Healthgrades somehow has become, when you type in a doctor's name, when someone is looking at reviews, as a patient, if I'm saying, hey, I've heard about this Dr. Gillespie, I want to look at the reviews, and they type it into Google, boom, one of the first review sites that pops up on that first page of Google is Healthgrades. So when I click on that, the next thing that I saw was this right here. Now, Greg had a 5-star review. It was wonderful, but he only had one. And I don't know if any of you have ever ventured into the online dating thing, but a profile picture like this right here doesn't really get you too far. And it's not too different in the world of looking at profiles on review sites. People want to see who they're going to. Now, as I scroll down the page a little bit, the first thing that pops up right after the address is it says, all right, you found Dr. Gillespie, but here are 841 other dentistry practitioners in the Vancouver, Washington area. And then it shows those individuals who have pictures, who have more reviews on there. So basically, on your Healthgrades profile, this is kind of, if you're not managing your Healthgrades profile, it basically becomes a way for people to go look up the reviews and say, oh my gosh, this other doctor over here has a lot more reviews. I'm going to go check him out. Now, keep this statistic in mind, that when an individual goes to look up reviews or to search for a dentist, basically they will look at 5 different profiles before selecting a dentist. Make sure that your profile pops. Make sure that you're grabbing the attention. Now, I'm going to give you an example of an individual who has a premium profile on Health Grades. There's a difference. Now, everyone has a general profile on Health Grades. If you're a dentist, you probably, chances are you've got this profile, and it was one of the first things that popped up when you typed your name in. Now, as a patient, I'm going to give you the example of for example, I'm going to take St. Paul and look for a dentist there. So I go to healthgrades.com and I type in dentist in St. Paul. Now, when I click search, it says we found 242 dentistry practitioners in this area. The second profile that pops up is this Dr. Mark Maltrude. Now, Dr. Maltrude had a premium profile with Health Grades for about a month when I took this screenshot. When he started, he had one review. Within 1 month's time, with his picture up on there, jumped up to 22 5-star reviews. And better yet, when I scrolled down the page, I was able to see his logos there. I can click to call him. And as I scroll down, this little phone icon kind of follows me down the page. So it's very different by having a premium profile and a generic profile. Now, if you're on a web browser, you can also put videos up on here, introductory videos. And this Dr. Maltrude has one. He has, and go to it. Go to Health Grades, search Dr. Maltrude, watch that video. He has basically a 60-second video that says, hey, this is who I am. This is who we're about. Come check us out. So that sets you apart. By putting a video on your Health Grades profile, your chances of having people stop and land on your page and check you out as a dentist increase by 4 times if you have a video on there. So now, in order to get a premium profile on Health Grades, currently right now, there are two patient relationship management systems that you can do that through. One is Sesame Communications. The other one is Solution Reach. That is the only way that as a dental professional, you can get a premium profile on Health Grades. The reason for that is because the post-appointment surveys that are sent out to your patients, there is they basically sync that with Health Grades so that when your patient comes into your practice and when they leave and they get this post-appointment survey that says, hey, we'd like to know how we're doing, fill this out, those responses now get posted directly up onto Health Grades, increasing those reviews. So now that's more accessible to your patients because every patient that comes in now has the ability to leave you a review, which will be posted directly up onto Health Grades. Now, in conclusion, why Health Grades? Why is Health Grades so important? Now, when we look at this, 72% of people that are looking at your Health Grades, that are on Health Grades searching for dentists, are women. They are the chief health officers in the family. 84% of those women are highly educated or have a secondary education. And 52% of them have an annual income over $75,000. These people that we want searching for your practice. So as we think about that, as we go back through and we think about using technology to retain your patients, we think about using technology to reactivate your patients, and then maximizing the technology and the resources that are already out there on the web. Make sure we're maximizing things like your Health Grades profile in order to bring patients in the door. Now, by using these 3 things and by maximizing the technologies, this really helps you align your polls in your practice for a maximum pull. Now, remember, everything that you do in your practice is either going to push patients away or pull them near. So when we think about this and we think about that analogy, the Uber versus the yellow cab. Now, this Uber, it completely changed my perception now. I can now go to a city and know that I've got other options. It no longer is, the yellow cab's no longer the necessary evil. Now think about this with your practice. Are you still using the same technologies as you were back in the 90s or early 2000s? Or are you using technology to really make an impact in your practice? Is your practice an Uber practice or a yellow cab practice? Now, I'm going to leave this up here. My name, again, is Mike Buckner, and my contact information is here. If you have any questions at all, I'd love to help you out. I also would be happy to send you an article that was published in the Progressive Dentist about health grades and talks a little bit more about how to maximize your health grades profile. Go ahead, go online and check out your health grades profile right now. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email, give me a call, or hey, even shoot me a text message, and I'd be happy to send you that article.
Mike, we've got 4 questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is from a non-user, that is someone who is not using engagement software today, and they ask, just for review, give us 5 principal benefits of using patient engagement software. Give us 5 things that it does that would be done better electronically than by hand.
Okay. Well, I would say the first one would be to confirm your appointments, obviously, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. But the first one would be confirming appointments. What that does is that saves hours every day, and you're reaching more patients by using an automated system like that. Okay. The second thing is it will help you fill last-minute cancellations. When you have that hole in your schedule, you can now reach a targeted group of individuals who want to get into your practice, who you can now fill that last minute cancellation. Now, I've talked to a lot of practices. On average, they're saying it takes them anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to fill some holes in the schedule. We can reduce that down. The third thing I would say would be to reactivate those patients that have fallen through the cracks. The fourth thing I would say would be to get feedback from your patients by soliciting for reviews and surveys out there on the web. And then last but not least at all would be educating your patients. So marketing to your patients, let them know what you offer. If that's teeth whitening, if that's Invisalign, 6-month smiles, sleep apnea, whatever it is that you do, mouth guards, you need to be educating your patients, and this is a very effective way to do that.
Excellent. What software does Solution Reach interact with? Or are there any that it doesn't?
Great question. You know, I've been here for 4 years, and I have rarely run into a practice management system that Solution Reach does not work with. Currently, it's over 300 practice management systems. Obviously, the majority of them and the most popular ones we will write back into, which means that when a patient clicks on Confirm Now, it will automatically change the color in, let's say, for example, the Dentrix practice management system. It will automatically change that color to show that that appointment has been confirmed.
Okay, just a brief tutorial. Explain how the reactivation system works automatically. So you've said that it automatically can go out and help. What is it drawing from in my software? That is, do I have to do some work in my software before I say, yeah, go do that?
Great point. Great point. So what this does is it syncs with the practice management system, and it determines the last time that patients were in for a practice. Now, I would say most everything in Solution Reach is customizable. So let's say, for example, we want to target patients who are a year overdue, or let's just say 8 months overdue. We can go in and we can turn that on. The system will comb through, will determine the last time that a patient was in your practice or if they are overdue for an appointment, and that's how it will reach out and send them communications to bring them back in their practice by saying, you know, whether it's a voicemail, and a voice message can basically reach out. If the only thing you have is a home phone number, is it can say, hey, Mike, we understand that it's been a while since you've been in our practice. We're concerned about your overall oral health. Press 1 to request an appointment, to leave a message with our office. And you can also, for the first 30 seconds of that automated message, you can also have your own voice on there to say, this is Dr. So-and-so. Please listen to the following message for important information about your oral care.
Last question. What's the coolest thing Solution Reach is working on? What don't you have that we know is coming? Anything you want to say? You don't have to.
That is a great question. And, you know, one of the things that, as new as this week, something that we are really focusing on this week is how to maximize your place on like a Google search whether that's paid for, clicks, but we are really trying to maximize the SEO. We're really focusing on making sure that you are visible to people out there on the web searching for you, and that is under the we call it the reputation management, kind of a reputation management, play on that on words, but you'll see that soon. If you are already using Solution Reach, if you go to that reputation management or the reporting to show you all the reviews that are out there on the web, you will soon see an icon there that will give you some more options about how to increase your SEO.
Excellent. Mike, we appreciate you. We appreciate Solution Reach as a trusted Crown Counsel resource partner. It may be interesting for everybody to know that a third of the Crown Counsel membership has engaged with Solution Reach. I noticed today 49% of those on the webinar are Solution Reach clients, which is very interesting. But 33% of the Crown Counsel membership have engaged with Solution Reach in some way. So we appreciate you. And for everyone, I asked Mike what he might be able to do for the membership, and two things. One, if you will send Mike an email, he will send you that health grades report for very interesting reading. It's most enlightening. Just send him an email and say you want the health grades report, and he'll fire it right back to you. Second, if you'd like to use Solution Reach and you are not a Solution Reach customer, Mike is the one that can make that happen for you, and he's made a special offer just for our Crown Counsel members that if you engage with them before the end of July, that instead of paying the $399 setup fee, he'll charge you $1. Good job, Mike, $1. That's awesome. And and instead of the $399 a month charge, it will be $379 a month continuing. So we encourage you to talk to Mike, find out what he can do for you, and what Solution Reach might have that would help you improve your practice. So Mike, thank you for making it easy for us, and thank you for your time and attention today. Appreciate you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All righty, we'll sign off. Thank you.
Thank you.